Hello, everybody, and thank you for joining me on a whirlwind tour through streamlining your dev experience from local to prod. Yeah, I would say let's take a look at the agenda I have brought today for you. So let's find out what the hell platform engineering is about. Um, First, we get on the same page, right? Then we kind of triangulate how we can get there. Let's talk about Score. Let's talk about what Humanitec adds to the mix. Take a look at the dominant developer use cases so you have a fair idea of where it makes sense to optimize and where it makes less sense to invest your time. And then I'll jump right into my terminal head first and see that I can put all that we've been talking through to actual practice. And then, as Sam said, we'll have questions and hopefully even answers at the end. Right, here we go. So what the family-friendly exclamation mark here is platform engineering. So there's a CNCF definition, which says, guess you can read that faster than I can read it. But in general, platform engineering is not a simple singular thing. But it for sure is one thing, and that is an abstraction layer between developers and the systems they interface with. At least it's creating that abstraction layer. And that is what we usually call an IDP, or an internal development platform. And an IDP, and Kelsey Hightower's works, is a digital platform, foundation of self-service APIs, tools, services, knowledge, and support. So basically everything you could gather and mesh that together into a compelling internal product. And the delivery teams of the company can make good use of that platform to deliver product features at a higher pace and with reduced coordination, and hopefully also with reduced cognitive load. But I'm getting ahead of myself. So now that we're on the same page, what is platform engineering and what is an IDP? Let's see. What is the secret ingredient for a successful platform? Good question, right? Interestingly enough, it was already on the page before. It's about self-service. And from both sides, right? You have the developers or other stakeholders from that domain, and they want to self-serve what the platform has to offer. So no tickets, not waiting for your infrastructure that you ordered for 20 days before you get it. Just push a button, or better even, commit your code, and you get what you need. Right? And on the other hand, you have the platform engineers and the infrastructure and operations people, and they also need to have self-service, so to speak, in a different way, but still self-service. And if you put that together in the right way, then you will get a great and compelling platform, because optimizing your platform at the expense of one of the two groups against the other simply doesn't work. You will just create the next bottleneck. Right. So how does successful self-service look like? Is that successful self-service? Right? A little buffet where you can literally go to and collect what you want to eat and put that on a plate. And if you are having enough patience, you can even take one of those rolls and slice it open, butter it, put assorted vegetables on top and meat, and then close it and call it a sandwich, right? Is that self-service? Yes, it for sure is, but is that the right way of self-service? That's the question. Is that self-service? It for sure is as well, right? I can go to that refrigerator and just pick out a can, and then I can, as it is hopefully fully prepared, I can just open it up and eat it directly. But on the left-hand side, DIY, I can completely choose how the outcome should be there. In the middle, commercial off the shelf, I cannot choose at all. The only choice I do have is which container do I pick? And in the end, hopefully it is configured in the right way. If not, I'm out of luck. It hopefully is still tasty enough to make me not sad. Or is that the right way of self-service? I hope that Subways isn't mad at me for taking one of their scenes, but they are literally the perfect example. I can go to a Subway store and I can say, hey, dear Subway's employee, I would like to have a sandwich. And I can, from the left-hand side, so up here, from the green side, I can take something that is pre-configured and they will prepare it exactly like it is there on the menu. Or I can take this side here where it says build your own, and I can tell them, okay, I would like to have this kind of bread and these kind of toppings on top, this kind of meat. You get the idea. I can completely collect the things that I want to be on top of my sandwich. And in the end, it doesn't matter what route I will choose. I can still modify it to a certain degree, even if I say, okay, I want from the prepackaged ones. And then I can also, yeah, take my sandwich and eat it. And I think you get the idea, right? This here is the best idea. There is just one caveat. In subways, you have somebody standing behind the counter who's basically taking the orders and preparing the sandwiches. In a platform thinking way, you do not want to have a person standing behind the counter. That would be the equivalent of ticket ops. You don't want that. You want to have a robot behind the counter. So let's see who's who. We have the customer standing in front of the counter, right? That's the developer. We have the robot standing behind the counter. That's the platform. And we hopefully have the prepared things in the middle, which are on the menu. And the menu, so the recipes, as well as all the ingredients, this is what the platform engineers and the infrastructure and operations people prepare to stock the shelves of the platform. All right, so let's take a look at how that is going to progress. In the end, it pans out to be building software should be commoditized, right? In more dimensions than we are used to, because developers work in that way. They start a project and they immediately start looking for the right frameworks. They start looking for prior art, things that people have put out into the public domain, open source software, where they can just take modules, parts, inspiration, and then take it from there and only solve the riddles that need to be solved instead of trying to build a rounder wheel every time. Yeah? And with platforming, we basically extend this metaphor into more dimensions than just parts of the software. We extend that to the realm of infrastructure. We extend that to the realm of cross-cutting concerns. And we basically take it to the level where it's as close as building from Lego bricks as we can get. All right. So how do you get there? In our way, we have a triplet of powerful things that get you there. We have Score. I'll talk a lot about that soon. We have the orchestrator, which is what Humanitec puts into the mix, and the portal, well, that goes on top of the orchestrator, right? The general idea is abstract first, standardize next, so your infrastructure and operations people don't die under the load of what is being churned out by the abstract ask, and then visualize the outcome so everybody can get a good overview and grasp of the outcome. So let's talk about Score. Score is an open source workload specification. It was launched in 2022 by a consortium of people coming from the industry, so cross-cutting. And it was submitted to the CNCF sandbox in 2024, right? And as of now, I shouldn't be officially launching that, so to speak, or talking a lot about it. But I think I can safely say that it was not only submitted, it was also accepted into the CNCF sandbox quite recently. And there will be official publications as soon as the official onboarding process commences and it gets ingested into the CNCF finally. Why is that a great thing? Well, let's talk about workload specification 101. What is a workload spec and why do you need it? So what is Score? Score is first of all a YAML-based format, as you can see here, right? It's saved alongside the workloads code in source control. So it's put directly next to what the developer is working on. And it basically completes its worldview by saying the contents in this file describe exactly what a runtime environment must supply so that what I'm building here can carry out its job and fulfill its destiny. And as you can see, that is a very abstract thing, right? Environment type, environment, DB type, Postgres service, type service. Okay, the naming is not really creative. You could call them, I don't know, my crazy environment type environment, yeah, Herbert type Postgres, and Jacqueline type service or whatever, yeah, doesn't matter. The idea behind that is that Score is first of all developer centric. So it takes a different approach than the rather infrastructure based approaches that we've seen in the past. Yeah, where you could for sure put all concerns in, but we're not focusing on what was important to a developer. It is platform agnostic. That's really important because Score solves a universal problem. It is not just something that is a product of the Humanitec people. It is something that is solving a universal problem and as such is going to the CNCF. And it's declarative because you don't want to imperatively solve a problem. You just want to declaratively say, dear complementing platform, this is what I need from you. Yeah. And as such, Score is part specification, the YAML file you've seen, part implementation, and there are a few reference implementations out there, like Score Compose, which can translate the same Score file into a Docker Compose YAML, Score Kate, which translates it into Kubernetes manifests, or Score Humanitec, which translates it into a deployment set that can be ingested by the orchestrator. And hopefully there are soon quite a lot more implementations which allow to translate the Score file into your favorite target platform's format. Yeah. So why Score? Developer self-service. Who would have guessed, right? The same workload can be run on different technology stacks. There is no need for the developer to expertly understand any of them. Yeah, ordering a database is universal because that's a dependency of the application. It's the platform's job to fulfill that ask in the runtime environment. And as such, I do not need to understand how that works. The reduction of configuration inconsistencies and risk is obviously a great thing, right? If it works as intended, it's fully automated, standardized, and a one-directional way. Nothing can go wrong here. And the separation of concerns, because it's an abstract ask, which can be complemented by very specific configuration on the platform side to actually define how things pan out, make this very versatile from the get-go. Right, so this would be an example end-to-end workflow with Score and Humanitec, right? You have the developer here living in the world of abstraction. That's where Score, the workload specification, lives, and where you basically are iterating. You have the developer's inner loop here, which may be based on Docker or Kubernetes. And on the other side, you have the platform engineers caring for the standardization, and they might use something like the orchestrator from Humanitec or a different platform as the runtime environment. So the orchestrator that Humanitec brings to the table is basically complementing the abstract ask of the developer with the opportunity for the platform engineer to complement this with a set of rules. So if developer asks for, hey, my workload is called A, it needs a Postgres and a DNS, and CNI builds that and projects it toward the orchestrator. CI passes along the context, right? Probably a tag was set on that point in code, and because of that, the platform orchestrator understands, okay, it needs to go to staging, yeah, not development. All right, given the context, I take a look at my configuration. So if the environment is staging, I'm going to use Postgres definition 2, whatever definition 2 means, right? Could be anything. Just get the idea that environments are usually widely different, right? Could be just a container in development and a fully fledged and configured cloud provider service in production, and anything in between. Right? The orchestrator understands that and allows the platform engineer to make use of those matching criteria to specify which configuration to use under which circumstances, and by that create environment-specific infrastructure and application configuration without the developer needing to think about it or get it right. All right, so we have the people stocking the menu and the tray where all of the nice ingredients are. We have the people standing in front of the counter who are asking nicely for something delicious. And now we finally have the robot who's actually preparing the meals, so that the guys over here do not need to build sandwiches, but can think about the next, or can dream up the next recipe of the even more delicious sandwich. All right. So where do Score and the orchestrator live? That's a good question, right? So you have an idea of a progression path, because they do not live in isolation, right? An IDP is a sum of many things. And we know that, and because of that, we have prepared reference architectures that allow you to be out of the door really, really fast. So this one here is for AWS. You have the orchestrator in the middle. You have our portal on top, or you could simply say, hey, I want Backstage. Just add true to that statement and you will get it. You have Score baked in, obviously, and you have a lot of other components. This thing here is not just slideware, it's completely terraformed. You can take that from GitHub, clone it, let it run against your cloud account, and 50 minutes later, you will have what you see here. Or depending on how cloudy the clouds are, it's a little bit faster, it's a little bit slower, right? But it shouldn't take you more than an hour to get there. And the idea is to have that, to be able to experience how life on top of an IDP actually looks like. All right. So having said that, how does life on top of an IDP even look like? Well, the prominent use cases for developers actually are daily deployments, including debugging, rollback, and observing changes in configuration. And the reason for that is that's what they do, right? Scaffolding a new workload and creating environments is something that usually happens at the start of a project or product. And it usually happens once, or probably over the service and lifetime of a product, which might be anything from 10 to 20 years. It probably happens every Blue Monday or few years, right? While daily deployments happen all of the time. If you optimize this case here, you're optimizing something that will not get you a lot of ROI. If you optimize here, it will get you a lot of ROI. That's basically the idea, right? Spinning up PR environments, or how we call them, ephemeral environments, is great. And adding or removing resources is something that happens also not that often, but sometimes, right? How often do you need a new database? You just want that database to be updated and cared for continuously and in a great fashion over the lifetime, right? And what do developers also want? Easy onboarding, 20-minute max. If I go over that time frame, probably somebody's looking at the next YouTube tutorial. Yeah? No break in workflow, interface choice. You need to provide UI, CLI, and API. You're losing out on one of those three, then you're probably losing customers. And you need to be autonomous and fast. Golden care paths over caches. What that means, probably I'll talk to that a little bit later. Or you just post some great questions about, hey, what the hell is a golden path? Right? Who knows? I think I've been talking for long enough. We should be off to the demo, right? Okay, let me end the slideshow and let me share differently. Okay. So hopefully now you can see my whole screen. I hope you can confirm that, Sam, because I don't know if that did work. Or somebody just writes into the chat, yes, we're seeing your whole screen. We can see the terminal. That would be highly reassuring for me. Thank you very much. All right. Anyone? We can see the terminal. Thank you very much, Jeffries. Awesome. Okay, cool. So off to the races we are, right? We have something in front of us. As you can see, I'm in my project directory. And I'm going to change to the dev demo directory, which actually prepares my environment with a few variables. Yeah, there's nothing else fancy. I have some directories in here, but I'm not going to use them. When I was thinking about this webinar here, I was thinking about, okay, what could I take as an example? And I thought long and hard, and in the end, I wanted to have something that is really not modern. At least not modern, right? I wanted something that is close to something that could be around for a few years already. And I stumbled upon one of my old friends, the Spring Pet Clinic. This is a Spring Boot application. Yeah? And this is exactly what I'm going to clone right now. And the reason for that is it is modern enough so it can be containerized easily. It is not modern enough to be a fully fledged microservice architecture and whatnot, right? It's what you will encounter mostly in today's enterprises, I would say. All right, so let's do a GitHub repo clone of this one and get right into Spring Pet Clinic. And as I know, I'm in a good old Java project here. I can use Maven and the Maven wrapper to actually package that up quickly so I can get somewhere while I'm still talking. Right, so it's a classical three-tier architecture. Yeah, client, server, database. In the end, you're asking me, hey, this is not a client-server application, right? But yes, it is, but in a more modern way because we replaced the client with an actual, with a web browser, which is nevertheless a universal client in a client-server architecture. Then we have a web-based server system, and then we have our database tier. And this is currently building. I hope that it builds fast enough so I don't need to keep talking for what not long. Oh, that's great. 47 errors. Awesome. That was not the expected outcome, to be honest. Let's see. Sometimes execution listener, load context. That would be suspicious. No, my Docker desktop is running. Let's see. Sometimes these good old Java applications need a kick in the shins to get going. No. Test run 47 failures, errors too. Okay, so let's see what the problem here. Postgres integration tests. Okay, so it seems Postgres integration is failing. That is strange. Skipping repeated template context. Okay, that is strange. See, and this is exactly the reason why I have this one here prepared. As you can see here, there is, or I can do a git status. So this branch is on the same as origin main. Yeah, I have nothing to commit. So I haven't been cheating. I have just been building this. My best guess is that Maven is just not having fun with the network today. Yeah, something is amiss. Java LTS conflict. That's a very good guess, Mike, but in this case, it's wrong because I've been doing exactly the same thing this morning when I tried it for the last time. And either I somehow upgraded my Java version in the meantime, which I do not recall doing, or it's something else. Yeah, okay, but I've done nothing here. There's just, if I go into the target directory, you can see that this has been built once. And the good part about that is that now it is actually containerized already. Let me take a look. What does it say? I can theoretically just build an image. Yeah. Let me execute that one. That should hopefully work because it is built already. It should be able to build a container from it. And that's great because then I have a container. And then we can take it from there. As you can see, that is configuring a connection pool here. It is actually running test scenarios against databases. It is doing real integration. And if that fails now, it doesn't fail. Okay, good. Look, see, test run 47, no failures, no errors. I have no idea what's wrong in the one I freshly grabbed. Probably they actually committed something in the meantime that is breaking with my system. I have no idea. Yeah, for me important, I will get a container so I can actually play with the container. That is great because I want to do something with Score, right? And I wanted to show you how local development with Score looks like. So what I need to do for that, or let's just assume for a moment that we do not have a Docker Compose YAML, right? Just going to delete that. We don't have that. Let's assume that I wanted to do something with Score. So next thing I do is I do a Score Compose dash, no, not dash, just init. And what it does now is it's creating a state directory for me. So a dot score compose, and it's giving me an example score YAML because that does not exist. It creates it. That's great. And I also can take a look at the specification, what is probably going to help me out later. Okay, great. I need to be a little bit faster because that error did kill more time than I thought it would. Cool. So now I have my score YAML. So what that is currently saying, there's a container hello world. We are talking about an example service that doesn't hold, right? We are talking about Spring Pet Clinic here. And my container is not hello world, but it's the clinic, obviously. I have Docker image ls. Let's grab Spring. I can see that I have Spring Pet Clinic here, 330 snapshot. That was built 44 years ago, so very recently. Thank you for playing around with the timestamps here. So I'm going to use Spring Pet Clinic, that image, and 330 snapshot. Okay, 330 snapshot. Okay, so now I have that. And I need to expose the right ports. I know that it's running on 8080 as any good Spring boot application. And if I would now start that, that would actually already work. But where would be the fun in this, right? What I also want to do is I want to order some resources. And the resource that I want is going to be posty of type Postgres, because I know that Postgres is a database that my Spring Pet Clinic here will work with. Okay, do I need to know more? Not for the moment. The only thing that I need to know about is how do I even connect my Spring Pet Clinic to that, right? Let's take a look at the configuration. If I remember correctly, there's Spring main resources and oh, look, there's an application Postgres properties. And in here it says the Spring data source username is going to be configured either from Postgres user from the environment, yeah, or it's going to be pet clinic. Okay, cool. I think I can do this. So Postgres user, no. And we need to have Postgres pass. And we need to have Postgres URL. I hope you will give me a few more minutes so I can get this finished. All right, so where do I get that from? Now I can work with replacers in Score. And I can say this comes from externals. And in this case, from posty. And in there, from the variable user, I think it's username. Yeah. And I can basically do the same for the password. And I need to be a little bit more curious about the URL because that thing looks like this, right? JDBC PostgreSQL. Okay, cool. So JDBC PostgreSQL localhost. Localhost is going to be replaced by host. And then we're going to replace that by the database name. And the interesting thing is, where do I get all that from? I get all of that, obviously, from this resource here, which is named posty. That's the reason why I have so many posties in here, right? So what I now want the platform to do is I want to transform this file into give me a database and then forward the configuration of that database into the environment variable so my thing can actually run. Okay, up to here, everything looks good, right? So all I need to do now is score compose generate, and I need to give it score.yaml. This one should be put in there. Okay, so what does it say? Successfully loaded 12 resource provisioners. Here's some info to connect to my Postgres database if I wanted to do. And it says Postgres pass, invalid ref, external is posty password, unknown reference. Okay. Externals, posty password. That's most probably going to be pass, invalid ref, username. Is it so? Thank you very much. Okay, of course. Let's see. Mhm. What happens when you're so used to being in a different environment? Okay, obviously it needs to be resources because we're talking about resources here. Resources post the host, that one does work. So now I've got almost everything right. I have a service which is doing this. I have all of that. The one thing I do not have is now how I can access that thing on top of what I want to run it from the Docker daemon, because I somehow need to expose that to local hosts, right? And if I now look into the score specification, the schema reference, and I can go to the, I can go here to the actual schema. And then I find also samples. But actually where I want to go, I want not to go to score go. I actually want to go to score compose. And inside there, I want to be in the examples because I have a few useful examples which are actually working. And I want to take DNS and route, take a look. Okay, resources, DNS, and route. Okay, this looks exactly like what I need down here. Okay, let's put that in here. So now I will get a DNS record, whatever that means locally, right? And this needs to be port 8080, not the web port. And we're going to be on root path. And all of a sudden, this looks pretty much complete to me. Let's just run the generate once more and then do a Docker compose up and see what happens. Okay, so it seems like we are slowly but surely getting online. And as you can see, the connection through the Hikari pool is actually working, which means that if I now go over here to local host, port 8080, no, port 8080, I should see Spring Pet Clinic. Okay, if I try to find owners and I look for this guy, and then I get stuck because Spring Pet Clinic is changing to Spring Pet Clinic, and I need to put it back to localhost. Then I can see, okay, if I look for Rod, it's going to be Eduardo Rodriguez. So sorry for that. There is a bug in Spring Pet Clinic. I would need to fix that. Probably I'll do that. Yeah. Okay, but now this is actually running locally. I can now just program, update the stuff, and it's going to be updated and running because it's running on top of my local Docker daemon. That's great. So what would I need to do now to actually get to the point where I could run this not locally? So first of all, I would need to tag the image. So Docker tag, yeah. If I do an image ls and grep for Spring, you can see that I have already done that. I have tagged this image, not Spring pet clinic. Yeah, so Spring Pet Clinic tag as J on the net because that's my Docker Hub username. And I did push that snapshot to Docker Hub. Right. I won't do that again because uploading that will take us a few minutes, right? So I'm just going to use that now. And that's literally the only difference. I need to switch to the public image here from just locally to the public one. Okay, now that I've done this, all that I need to do to actually get this running in a different environment is to use humctl, which is Humanitec CTL, in memoriam of kubectl, and I can use score deploy. And no, wait a second. I first of all need to create an app. Let's call it Pet Clinic. And then I can deploy to it. So score deploy -- app Pet Clinic. And now this score file has been submitted to the orchestrator. And the orchestrator in this case is living here. As you can see, I've created this application. It has a development environment. They always come with one. And it's already deploying here. And that should momentarily change. So you will see I will get DNS, I will get a database as soon as we are taking off the ground, right? Because all of that is already prepared in my score file. As soon as the image is accessible to the runtime environment, the Kubernetes cluster that I want to run it on, I just let it go and it will take off. That's the estimation, right? Sadly, this is going to fail. I know that already. So I would say, while this deploys and fails, and I will do the update live so you guys see why it's failing and what I do against it, we will just progress to the Q&A part in the background, right? Just advance one slide, say, okay, Q and hopefully A. You got some questions, I'm going to take them. And I'm going to fix that quickly because the reason for that failing is actually that there is not enough resources available to this.
What an exciting way for us to close off into the Q&A, Clemens. You have me on the edge of my seat. So let me then read out some of the questions that we have got for you. And if you haven't asked one yet, feel free to share it in the chat, or you can share it in the Q&A section, and we will ask that. We've got a few questions from Mike J, and really good ones. So thank you, Mike, for asking these. The first one is, does Score have any relationship to Helm charts?
Score does have no relationship at all to Helm charts. What you could do is you could actually write an implementation that takes all of the input that you have in Score and translates that into a Helm values file, and then put that together with a generic Helm chart, and then you could deploy something with it. But over that, Score has no relationship with Helm charts. They are basically philosophically incompatible. Score is meant to be simple from the developer's perspective. Helm charts are, because Helm is conceptually a package manager, something that is very much broader. It does not focus on the developer's demands and needs. And because of that, it is philosophically incompatible. You can just take Score and use it as input for a Helm chart, as I said. Okay, so let's quickly get the logs from this pod in the namespace. Development Pet Clinic. Then you can see, look, there is a memory exhaustion. Okie dokes. While the next question comes, I'm going to fix that. Whoa.
I was muted. After 4 years of virtual working, you'd think I would stop talking while muted, but I did. Now we've got another question on Score. So for Score, is Podman supported to avoid root daemon on host?
Is Podman supported to avoid root daemon on host? So you don't want to have a Docker daemon on the host system. And instead you want to use Podman. Well, then go ahead and knock yourself out, because Score literally only creates, in this case, the Docker Compose file. Yeah, it is very unopinionated about what you do with it. And if you take it from there and then you just use nerd control to put it on top of Podman, then that's that, right? Or you could just use the Docker CLI to put it on top of a Docker daemon. Yeah? Or you could use something different altogether. Doesn't matter. All right, so now I've put some resource request and limits in here. I've basically assigned a little bit more memory. And all I need to do now is I need to deploy this once again. While you probably have the next question for me, hopefully.
Yes. Does Score
Oh, look.
support Tecton workflows?
Tecton workflows, right. Sorry, I was missing a T in that one.
Sorry, my overemphasis there.
Right, Tecton workflows. Score is completely unopinionated on what kind of pipeline you put it into. Score is a workload specification, right? I could have a Tecton pipeline which uses one of the Score implementations to actually turn the Score file into your target platform's format and then forward that in the right way to the target platform. So yes, it absolutely works with Tecton workflows. And now we have this URL here, and it will give me a bad gateway. And that's going to be gone soon as the Java application is initialized. Java is resource hungry, and my Kubernetes cluster is weak as it is a demo system. I'm very sorry. You're going to see 502 bad gateway for a few moments until it finally has initialized.
It wouldn't be a demo, Clemens, if it didn't cause.
If everything worked, that would be absolutely dramatic, right? I always like breaking and fixing stuff. It looks more real. All right, cool. So now I can find the owner, and this time I can type in rod, and it will actually work because this time I have a real DNS name up here, right? And I can add a new pad. I can add Rosie. Rosie, I like. Rosie was very recently hatched, and Rosie is obviously a snake. And now I have Rosie here. Right, so application up and running, working, and that didn't actually take a lot of time, right? To write that score file, deploy it locally, and then I could just start modifying. And as soon as I have the container in the right version that I wanted to have, yeah, then I just shoot it up to the cloud, and I'm happy. What I could also do is I could replace that image here with just a dot, right? I should first copy the image before the string before I do that. If I save that now, all I need to do when I do this is I add a -i and then the string, which basically means when you put that score file forward to the target platform, please replace the dot in the image with this string here. It's mighty convenient, so the developer does not need to modify the score file all of the time. Your pipeline can basically, as soon as it transforms, put the right tag because it knows about it into the transformation, and off to the races you are. And it is much more automatable that way. Great. Now everything's going to break in the background, obviously. Yes, of course. No, it's up and running still. It's not going to die anymore. Once I got it right, it's now right forever. Cool.
I think good
Any
time
other questions?
for one question on this. Can Humanitec software stack be deployed to run on premise?
Absolutely. The only question is, do you want to run the orchestrator on premise? So usually we try to fulfill our customers' request with the orchestrator in the SaaS version. The reason for that is running the orchestrator on your own is possible, but it is quite a journey. Yeah, so we usually try to do that with the SaaS version. And then you put, for example, our operator on top of the clusters where you want to deploy things. So you can actually carry out the deployments in your network, which means, for example, secrets can be hydrated at the last point in time inside your network. So they stay your secrets and not ours. Uh, and what you then also can do is you can install a so-called agent and put that in between. So you actually have an inversion of communication direction. So it's now the cluster trying to pull in changes over the agent from the orchestrator. It's not the orchestrator from the internet trying to talk into your network. And usually that is secure enough. We have governments and we have highly regulated industries using this methodology to actually run against the SaaS version of the orchestrator. But you could totally run it on-prem as well if you wanted to have a challenge.
And if you're looking for some more content on that, we actually have some blogs and a reference architecture you can find, which is a good example of that exact use case. So to the next question. Oh, lots of questions coming in. That was a good one, Clemens. We really kicked people off there.
Nice.
So let's just clear a first one that was just from before. So I think this will be a quick one. So humectl score creates app, pet clinic creates a namespace. Question mark.
Yes, yes, it actually does. Because I have configured the orchestrator in this case to do tenancy by namespace. This is a development system. I don't care if I have noisy neighbors. It's not so important to me. So I do tenancy by namespace. That means if I now deploy a second app, it will just be a new namespace on the same cluster. I could configure the orchestrator differently, for example, to do tenancy by cluster. If I wanted to do that, then I would get it a discrete Kubernetes cluster created before something is deployed on it. And then I could still choose if I wanted to have tenancy by cluster per application, which means development, staging, production, for example, go onto one cluster, but are just separated by namespaces. Or I could even do one cluster per stage. Or I could say, hey, in development, everything on one cluster because I want to optimize my cloud spend. Yeah, but in staging and production, the apps get their own clusters. Yeah, I can play around with those models and I can have different tenancy borders as much as I like. I could even do tenancy by subscription if I wanted to, right? No problem at all. It's just a matter of time for such demos. Because if I do tenancy by subscription, first thing I do is I create a subscription, I create networks, I update the API buy-ins and the allowances inside of the subscription. I finally create a Kubernetes cluster, and all of that is going to take at least 30 minutes before I can finally deploy something. So in these kind of demos, I have a prepared cluster and I do tenancy by namespace. Great.
All right. So over to another one, which was a bit of an elaborator on the on-prem. I think we can cover that quickly. So it's a follow-up on the on-prem question. So when on-prem here refers to ISO layer 1 isolated network. I think the answer is still yes.
So that's interesting to talk about the not the ISO but the OSI. I think it's the OSI layer model where we're talking about separated networks. But essentially, what we mean with on-prem, we mean by that a discrete place that could be, for example, inside of a cloud provider, your own subscription, your own virtual network in there where you run an instance of the orchestrator. It could also be your own data center and you run an instance of the orchestrator in there. Or it could be like in one of the more advanced customer models that we have. We have an ISV who produces software. They use the orchestrator in SaaS mode to speed up their development. And then they use the GitOps mode of the orchestrator to pack a deployment package, so to speak, then transport that deployment package together with the images over to the customer's premises, which is completely isolated. And with completely, I mean it's bare metal sitting in their data center and it is air-gapped. There's no internet access. They load the images onto a registry, which is hosted there, and they load the deployment package into a Git registry. From there, it gets pulled into the cluster. The cluster is running our operator, which starts to work on the custom resources. It just ingested and creates the complete deployment, including the infrastructure, including the configuration of the infra and the application. And by that, we have the complete deployment covered, although it's highly isolated. It's literally somebody running into the mountains in Switzerland with a USB stick in his hand. Yeah. So we can cover such advanced models. And yes, that would be down to OSI layer 1.
I can't wait to see that.
It's happening.
Mm.
And we are not allowed to film that, sadly, though.
That would make such great content, though, Clemens. I think people would really
Absolutely.
you on your bike with a
Yes.
USB stick. That's the next.
Me on my bike and me and my trusty USB stick. Yes.
Exactly.
Let's go.
So then our next question, which is a little bit inside baseball, as it were, how come all scored repos have so few GitHub stars? For example, Score K8s, it always sounds like a mature and widely used product. Well, first of all, I'm glad you think it sounds like a mature and widely used product. We'll highlight that. That's the best part.
Right. The difference is between the implementations and the spec. You will see that the spec, which was there first, has quite some stars on it. And then the implementations, they tend to not have a lot of stars because usually that's what people just use. You take a look at the spec, you find out how it works, and then you install the tool, so to speak, the implementation. In my case, it's brew install score compose, and then I just use score compose. I do not care about the repo. Well, I do because I sometimes actually contribute to those repos. I'm a committer, right? But most of the people who just use that stuff, they care about the spec and they do not care about the other repositories. That's a little bit the interaction and relationship. And that's why you see over 7K stars on the spec and I don't know, a few measly stars on the implementations.
Yeah, and I think we can see when we look at the peak that these spikes in stars is basically whenever one of these implementations is released. And so it's clear people are using the implementation and then just starring the main repo. But I think definitely over a period of time, and Score has just been accepted by CNCF as a sandbox project. So I think we'll see a lot more back and forth around there as well. But it's a valid question to ask. So that at the moment is all the questions that we've got, but we have a couple more minutes if you have anything else that you would like to ask Clemens.
More accurate measure would be clone or downloads. Yes, if GitHub would kindly supply us with that, that would be a more accurate measure. But I'm not aware if we can actually get those numbers. And we do not want to be a proxy in between, for example, your implementation downloads. Yeah, we could try to put them on a CDN, which does measurements, right, and counts the downloads. But to be honest, guys, you use the stuff if you like it, right? If it's a great product and you want to use it, use it. If you do not think it adds value and if you do not think it's the right choice, it's open source, right? It's community driven. You make your choices.
And on the question,
slides, recording shared. Yes, as soon as Sam is done shaving.
Exactly. As soon as I'm finished shaving this evening, I will be handing over the slides to everyone. So they will come in tomorrow, I believe, and you'll get a follow-up email with the recording, with the slides, and a link to some more stuff if you want to continue with some more webinars, because there's quite a few detailed topics as well on the agenda for the near future as well. I think if we've got no more questions coming in. Thank you for being a wonderful audience. And thank you very much, Clemens, as always. I think this was a really fun one. I hate to say it, but I do like it when it breaks and you have to fix it live. I always like that more than when everything works for you.
Yeah,
But
glad I could entertain you.
I enjoyed it. I think everyone here enjoyed it as well. So thank you everyone so much for joining. And as always, if you look on the Humanitec website, you can find all other events that are coming up. There's some great things coming. Clemens has a few more coming soon as well. And on our blog and our white paper section, you can find content that goes deeper into all of these sections that you've covered here. And feel free if you've got specific questions. You can message Clemens on Slack, or if you want something related to content or some recommendations, you can message me in the Slack as well, and we can point you anywhere you need to go. So thank you so much, everybody.
Absolutely.
A wonderful day or wonderful evening, wherever you are. Thank you.
Thank you for being such a wonderful host, Sam. And last minute of demo content, bonus content. If you want to experience that stuff really, really fast, faster than the reference architecture could get you there, we have the 5-minute IDP. Look for that 5-minute IDP. Have your own IDP on your own notebook, quicker than a bowl of ramen.
Oh, yeah.
Then you can try that stuff out. It's not as full featured as the reference architecture, obviously, but it's a great toy to play around with and find out if Score is for you.
Absolutely.
Okay, having said that, I also wish you a wonderful evening wherever you are on the planet. I hope it keeps spinning and we keep winning. Yes.
Thanks, everyone.